So she hit me with that line, you know the one, if you can't handle my best friend, then you can't handle me. Well, after he insulted me right in front of her whole family, I didn't even stick around to argue. I just left. Later on, her own siblings ended up telling me some pretty disturbing truths about the guy. And now? Now she's crawling back, asking for my help. I figured I'd share this story because it got way more insane than I ever expected. I thought I was just dating a great woman. Turns out her best friend since high school had other plans. What started as some weird vibes turned into full-on chaos, and I had to decide if I was going to stick around or walk. I'm not looking for sympathy, I just know I can't be the only guy who's dealt with something like this. I'm a 37-year-old welder. I've been in this trade long enough that I don't feel the need to justify it to anybody. I burn metal together for a living, I make good money, and I like it. It's honest, steady work that pays the bills. I've never been the type to apologize for not having some fancy career where I sit behind a desk all day pretending to be important. About 14 months ago, I started dating Kendall. She's 34, works as a dental hygienist, and at first, I thought I hit the jackpot. She's smart, funny, takes care of herself, and she's actually good with money, always pays her share. We clicked right away, and after the first couple of months, we were already talking about maybe moving in together. I don't rush into stuff like that, I've been burned before, but I wasn't against the idea either. Then things started getting sketchy. Enter Landon. He's 36 and has apparently been glued to Kendall's life since high school. They dated for like 5 minutes when they were teenagers, but for some reason, he never left. He helped her through her divorce, and has basically been this shadow hovering in the corner of her life for 2 decades. From day one, I didn't like the vibe. And it wasn't in a jealous, insecure way. I've had girlfriends with guy friends before, no problem. But there's something off about a man in his mid-30s still orbiting around his high school fling like a lost planet. I told Kendall straight up early on that I wasn't cool with it. I wasn't rude, but I didn't dance around it either. I said, listen, I'm not going to be the guy sitting here pretending this is normal. She just brushed me off with the classic, his like family. I laughed in her face. Family doesn't show up unannounced and eat half your groceries, Kendall. That's called freeloading. She didn't like that one, but whatever. I wasn't going to bite my tongue just to keep things peaceful. A couple of months later, we planned a weekend trip to a cabin by the lake. I was really looking forward to it. Welding is exhausting, and I don't take vacations often. I thought it'd be nice to just get away with her, no distractions. We packed up, headed out there Friday evening, grilled some food, and for about 2 hours, I was actually relaxed. Then guess who rolls up Saturday morning with his sad puppy act? Yep, Landon. Apparently, Kendall had mentioned the trip in passing, and of course he filed it away. He said he was having a bad day and thought driving 2 hours to crash our weekend was the best solution. And of course, Kendall just melted. Oh, you poor thing, come stay with us. Next thing I know, she's dragging out a sleeping bag for him. I couldn't help myself. I looked at him and said, damn, Landon, you got a radar for when Kendall's having fun without you, or do you just sniff it out like a bloodhound? He gave me that fake laugh people do when they are mad but don't want to show it. Kendall shot me a please don't start look, but I wasn't going to sit there and act like this wasn't insane. The rest of the day was just Landon throwing his little pity party, whining about his ex like Kendall was his therapist. I cut him off more than once. I said, man, she's not your shrink. Maybe you should start paying her hourly. When he tried to rope her into another heart-to-heart, I grabbed the cooler and said, nah, Kendall, you don't need to babysit him. Come help me with the boat. Let him journal it out or something. I made sure he knew he wasn't the main character. I grilled the food, I ran the boat, and when he sulked, I didn't care. I wasn't about to let some washed-up high school flame turn my weekend into his therapy retreat. By the time we packed up, it was obvious. This wasn't cute best friend stuff. It was unhealthy, straight up. Kendall wasn't just close to him, she was bending over backwards like he owned a share in her life. and I wasn't signing up for that. On the drive home, I was just thinking, yeah, this crap's not going to fly. Either she wakes up to it, or I'll walk. I don't compete with clowns. That thought was still in my head a couple of weeks later when Kendall said she wanted to host Christmas at her place. She said it would just be her siblings, a few cousins, me, and of course, Landon. I almost laughed when she slipped his name in there like it was no big deal. I figured, fine, if I was going to be serious with her, I might as well see how her family felt about me. I was also curious how they treated Landon. Did they think this was normal, too? So Christmas Eve rolls around. I walk in with a bag of groceries, and guess who's already there? Not only there, but in the kitchen wearing a dumb Christmas apron, stirring mashed potatoes like he owned the place. I froze for a second, then laughed. Damn, Kendall, didn't realize I was late to Landon's Christmas party. Her brother snorted behind me, and even Kendall gave me a half-smile before muttering, "Stop." Landon just glared. Dinner went smooth enough. Afterwards, we're all sitting around the table and I mention a big welding job I just finished, a new section of piping for a processing plant. Long hours, tough work, but good money. I wasn't bragging, just making conversation. That's when Landon pounced. He leans back in his chair with this smug look and says, "Yeah, must be real tough burning metal all day. Some of us have actual careers." The whole room went silent. I just stared at him for a second, then smirked. "You're right, Landon. Some of us do have real careers. Mine keeps the lights on in places you probably can't even spell. What's yours again?" "Full-time potato salad taster." Her cousin nearly choked on his drink. One of her brothers coughed into his napkin. Landon's face turned red, but he tried to play it cool. "I just meant, welding isn't exactly prestigious." I nodded slowly. "Yeah, you're right again. Nothing prestigious about building the bridges you drive on, the buildings you sit in, or the pipelines that heat your precious apartment. But hey, somebody's got to keep your little world from falling apart while you sit around critiquing it, right?" He opened his mouth, but I didn't give him the chance. "See, the difference between me and you, Landon, is I don't have to justify myself at a dinner table. My work shows up in the real world. You just show up with flowers and sob stories. Forgive me if I don't bow down." The table went dead quiet, except for her sister Eleanor muttering, "Finally." Landon looked like he'd swallowed a lemon. Then he snapped, "You're an idiot. Everyone here knows Kendall only puts up with you because she's too polite to say you're out of your league." I leaned forward, elbows on the table, and grinned at him. "Funny, because the only person who seems desperate here is you. Tell me, Landon, how's it feel watching another man sit at the head of the table while you're stuck playing sidekick?" Kendall's jaw dropped. Her brothers were wide-eyed but clearly entertained. Eleanor had this little smile, like she'd been waiting years for someone to say it. That's when Landon tried to drag Kendall in. He turned to her and said, Tell him he's embarrassing himself." Kendall looked panicked, like a deer in headlights. Instead of defending me, she went straight into damage control, patting Landon's arm like he was a toddler having a tantrum. "Landon, calm down. Let's not do this." Which only made me laugh harder. Wow, this is wild. Guy calls me an idiot, trashes my work, and I'm the one embarrassing myself? Unreal. Landon shoved his chair back and stormed into the kitchen, muttering under his breath. The rest of the night was a blur. The mood was wrecked. I stayed to help clean up, but the second her brothers left, Kendall lit into me. "You embarrassed Landon in front of my family. You need to apologize." I actually laughed in her face. Apologize to him? He disrespected me, Kendall. If you think I'm going to bend the knee to your emotional support parasite, you've lost it. She crossed her arms, dead serious. Landon's been in my life for 17 years. He's not going anywhere. If you can't accept that, then maybe we're done. I just stared at her for a second, then grabbed my jacket. Guess we're done, then. I don't compete with clowns, remember. She followed me out to my truck, asking where I was going, but I didn't even answer. I just got in, turned the key, and drove off. Didn't even bother looking in the rearview. If Kendall was willing to toss me out over that clown, then fine, she could have him. The first half of the drive was quiet, just me on the road. Then my phone started lighting up like it owed me money. Text after text, call after call. I let it buzz in the cup holder. If I'd answered, it would have been the same script. You're immature. You embarrassed Landon. You need to fix this. By the time I pulled into my driveway, I had about 20 unread messages. I didn't read them. Sometimes silence is the best reply. I wasn't giving her the satisfaction of a fight. The next morning, I finally scrolled through the texts. It was just as I expected, paragraphs of her tearing into me, calling me disrespectful, saying I'd ruined everything. He ruined Christmas, and honestly, that might be my new favorite achievement of his. The accusation that I'm just jealous of Landon actually made me laugh out loud. Jealous of a guy who can't move on from his high school crush, hanging around like a stray cat that never found a new home? Please. I threw my phone aside. Arguing was a waste of energy. If she wanted to spend her life babysitting a grown man, that was her circus, but I refused to be another act in the show. For 3 days, I ignored her completely. The calls and texts came in waves, shifting from angry rants to desperate pleas. It started with, "You owe Landon an apology," then morphed into, "You're being immature. Just talk to me." By the 3rd day, it was, "I miss you. Please don't do this." None of it mattered. My mind was made up. If she couldn't see the problem, I wasn't going to blindfold myself just to keep her company. Then Eleanor called. I almost sent it to voicemail, but she texted right after, "Please pick up. It's about Kendall and Landon." So, I answered. Eleanor didn't waste a second. "I just want to say I saw what happened at Christmas, and I think you were right." That threw me. Everyone in that family had looked uncomfortable but stayed silent. Hearing one of them say it out loud was a shock. She continued, "Landon's been like this forever. You're not crazy. Every guy Kendall has ever dated has dealt with the same thing. Some left early, others stuck around too long. But it always ends the same." I leaned back in my chair. "Go on." Eleanor sighed. "Her ex-husband, Timothy. You know why that marriage fell apart? Landon. He was always there, crying about his problems and sabotaging things. Timothy finally asked Kendall to set some boundaries, and she called him controlling. You know who put that idea in her head? Landon." I just shook my head. Of course. She kept going. "One time, Timothy confided in Kendall about his job stress. Landon somehow found out and twisted it into, 'Timothy can't handle providing for you.' It caused a massive fight. And the real kicker? Landon was also feeding Timothy misinformation, stuff Kendall had told him in confidence." I let out a low whistle. So he was playing both sides, blowing up the relationship from the inside. "Exactly," Eleanor said. "And it wasn't just Timothy. Every boyfriend before him, same story. If they went on a trip, Landon would magically have an emergency to pull her back. If things started getting serious, he'd pick fights until they broke up." I gave a dry laugh. Sounds like the guy should put professional homewrecker on his resume. She didn't laugh, but I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "We've all tried talking to her, me, her brothers, even our parents. But she always defends him. It's like he has some kind of hold on her. That's why I called. You stood up to him in front of everyone. Nobody's ever done that before." I stayed quiet for a moment, letting that sink in. Nobody. Not one person in nearly 2 decades had ever checked him. No wonder he acted like he owned the place. Eleanor added, "I don't know what you're planning, but I hope you don't just walk away. Kendall needs to wake up, and maybe you're the one who can make her see it." I let out a short laugh. "Eleanor, look, I appreciate you telling me all this. Really. But here's the thing, I'm not here to play the savior. I'm not going to wrestle some delusional manchild for my girlfriend's attention. If Kendall wants me, she knows where to find me. But if she wants him, she can have him. She was quiet for a beat, then said softly, "Fair enough. Just don't let him make you feel crazy. He's been pulling this same routine for years." We hung up, and I sat there staring at the ceiling. Everything Eleanor told me suddenly made sense. Landon wasn't just a bad friend, he was a parasite. Every time Kendall got close to someone, he'd drain the life out of the relationship until she was back at square one, alone, except for him. And the worst part was, she couldn't even see it. That was the part that stung. Not Landon himself. Guys like him don't bother me. Their delusional, entitled egos always collapse under their own weight eventually. What stung was Kendall choosing to ignore reality. Watching her comfort him at Christmas while he insulted me told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in her life. So I made a decision. I wasn't going to chase her. I wasn't going to explain myself again. If she wanted to keep babysitting her overgrown high school crush, that was on her. But if she ever woke up and realized what was happening, that would have to come from her, not me. For a while, I stuck to that. I went to work, put in my hours at the shop, came home, and ate my meals in peace. No drama, no constantly buzzing phone, no grown man barging into my weekends with his emotional baggage. It was quiet. It felt good. But Kendall was still stuck in the same loop. I wasn't talking to her, but people talk. Her sister Eleanor texted me updates, and sure enough, Landon didn't waste any time turning the drama up to 11. His first stunt was showing up at Kendall's office with flowers and coffee, acting like her boyfriend. Eleanor said Kendall's coworkers were whispering about it in the break room. One even asked, "So, are you dating him or the welder guy?" Apparently, Kendall laughed it off, but I know that had to sting. She worked hard to keep her professional life separate, and now this clown was parading around like Prince Charming. The second stunt was the texting. Eleanor told me he was sending Kendall walls of messages all day. Stuff like, "I can't believe you're choosing someone over me after all these years," and, "If you don't answer, I'll know you're throwing me away like everyone else." Classic manipulative garbage. The third stunt was him dropping by her place uninvited even more than usual. Only now, he wasn't even pretending it was casual. He'd stand outside her door, buzzing non-stop, or hang out in the parking lot waiting for her to come home. One of her neighbors even asked if she was okay because they'd seen a guy pacing around late at night. And the worst part? Kendall was still defending him. Eleanor said she kept making excuses like, "He's just going through a rough time," or, "He doesn't mean it like that." That's when I knew she hadn't hit her breaking point yet. She was still blind, still trying to manage his moods instead of facing the truth. But Landon wasn't slowing down. One night, about 3 weeks after Christmas, my phone buzzed around 11:30 p.m. I was dozing off watching some dumb TV rerun and almost ignored it, but I saw it was Kendall. Then she called again. And again. 3 back-to-back calls close to midnight. That was different. I answered with a sharp, "What?" Her voice was shaky and panicked. "He's here. Landon's outside my building. He's banging on the door. He won't leave." I sat up straight. In the background, I could hear it, muffled thuds and a man's voice yelling. I couldn't make out every word, but the tone was pure, unhinged rage. I kept my voice flat. "This is exactly what I warned you about, Kendall. This is your loyal best friend in action." She started crying. I don't know what to do. He's screaming that I betrayed him. My neighbors are looking out their windows. I cut her off. "Stop. You know what to do. Call the cops. Right now. I don't want him to get in trouble. He's just..." I snapped. "Kendall, he's a grown man, not a toddler. This isn't a tantrum in a grocery aisle. He's pounding on your door in the middle of the night. If you don't call the police, you're telling him this is okay. And guess what? Next time, it'll be worse." She went silent for a moment. In the background, I heard Landon bellow something about her owing him loyalty. My blood boiled. I softened my voice just enough to cut through her panic. "Listen to me. You are in danger. Call the cops. Let them handle it." Finally, she whispered, "Okay." I stayed on the line while she dialed. Within 10 minutes, I heard sirens faintly over the phone. There was more yelling, more pounding, then a muffled commotion as the cops dragged him away. When it was quiet again, Kendall came back on the line, her voice small. "They took him. They said he'll spend the night in holding." I leaned back in my chair, exhausted but not surprised. "Good. Maybe he'll finally get the message." She sniffled. "I'm sorry. I should have listened to you." I didn't let her off easy. "You think? I told you this wasn't normal. I told you he wasn't just a best friend. But you chose to ignore it. You made me the bad guy for standing up for myself." This time, she didn't argue. She just whispered, "You're right. It was stupid. I've enabled him." For the first time since all this started, she actually sounded like she believed it. And that was the difference. Before, she defended him, she brushed off the red flags. But now, she was the one calling me in tears because the man she swore was like family was acting like a lunatic at her door. That was her wake-up call. Not me, not her siblings, not even Eleanor. It had to be Landon showing his true colors in the ugliest way possible. I hung up that night knowing one thing: Kendall wasn't the same person anymore. The blind loyalty had finally cracked. She couldn't unsee what had happened. And as much as I wanted to stay cold, a part of me knew that if she was finally waking up, things were about to get very interesting. The next morning, Kendall called again. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. This time, she wasn't frantic, she was quiet and drained. "You were right," she said, her voice hollow. "I can't believe I defended him all those times. I didn't sugarcoat it. Yeah, you backed him while he disrespected me. I told you he was obsessed. You didn't want to hear it." She didn't argue, which shocked me. Instead, she said, "I want to fix this. Not just with you, but with myself. I'm filing for a restraining order today." I raised my eyebrows, even though she couldn't see me. That was not the Kendall I knew. I found out 2 weeks ago. Honestly, it was about time. I was glad she was finally done babysitting him and had started protecting herself. Later that week, I went with her to court. I didn't sit at the table with her, this was her fight to own, but I was there in the back row, watching the whole thing unfold. Landon strolled in like he owned the place, wearing a suit and looking smug, as if he was about to give a TED talk on being a professional victim. His lawyer seemed like the type who usually defended parking tickets and DUIs, clearly out of his depth but trying way too hard to look the part. When the judge asked Kendall to speak, she laid everything out with a calm I didn't know she had. She told them about the late-night pounding on her door, the manipulative texts, the surprise visits to her office, everything. She even had a folder full of screenshots, all organized by date. I have to admit, I was impressed. This was the same woman who used to tell me, "Landon doesn't mean it that way." Now, she was standing in front of a judge, showing the receipts. Landon's lawyer tried to spin it, claiming I had manipulated her into turning against a lifelong friend. The judge looked at him like he'd just farted in church. Then Kendall's co-workers testified over Zoom. They talked about Landon showing up at their lunches, calling her non-stop, acting like he was her possessive boyfriend. That pretty much buried whatever defense he had left. The judge didn't hesitate. A full restraining order for a year. 500 feet minimum. No contact whatsoever. Landon's jaw dropped. He genuinely seemed shocked that someone had finally told him no. After court, I expected Kendall to collapse into a puddle of tears. Instead, she walked out with her head held higher than I'd ever seen it. She looked at me and said, "That felt good." But of course, Landon wasn't done. The restraining order just forced him to get creative. A week later, Kendall's phone started blowing up with messages from friends asking, "Hey, did you see what Landon posted?" He'd made burner social media accounts and was blasting out garbage about her, claiming she'd cheated on her ex-husband, Timothy, and that she was just using her new guy for money. The posts were pathetic, but people saw them, even patients at the dental office where she worked. Her boss had to pull her aside and ask what was going on. Luckily, the clinic believed her after she explained, but the whole thing was humiliating. Then he leveled up his smear campaign. He called Kendall's parents, who live across the country and don't use social media, and fed them his sob story. He told them she was being manipulated and isolating herself, that he was worried for her. Naturally, her mom freaked out and called her, crying. Kendall had to sit them down on a FaceTime call and explain everything from the beginning. By the end, her parents were just stunned. Her mom admitted, "I always wondered why your relationships never lasted. I thought it was just you. I didn't realize it was him." But the worst hit came when Landon dragged Timothy back into the mess. One night, Kendall's phone rang. It was her ex-husband, and he was furious, demanding to know why she was badmouthing him years after their divorce. She was completely confused until he said, "Landon told me you've been blaming me for everything." That's when it all unraveled. Timothy finally admitted he'd always suspected Landon was behind their problems. He said, "Looking back, it all makes sense. The weird fights, the way you always defended him, the private stuff I only ever told you, somehow Landon knew it, too. He was sabotaging us, wasn't he?" Kendall broke down then. Not because Timothy was yelling, he wasn't even angry at her anymore. He just sounded relieved, like all the pieces had finally clicked into place. He told her about a night Landon had accidentally let slip some private information she had confided in him, and how that betrayal had spiraled into their separation. By the end of the call, Timothy said something I never expected to hear. "I don't hate you, Kendall. I hate him. He stole years of our lives, and you didn't even see it." After she hung up, Kendall just sat on my couch, staring at the wall. "He ruined my marriage," she whispered. "He's been controlling my entire adult life, hasn't he?" I didn't gloat. I could have said "I told you so," but it wasn't the time. Instead, I just leaned back and said, "Yeah, and you let him. But the fact you see it now? That's the first step." For once, she didn't snap back or get defensive. She just nodded, quiet, processing the weight of everything. That night was the real turning point. Kendall wasn't ignorant anymore. She wasn't bending over backwards to excuse him. She was finally, truly pissed. Pissed at herself for letting him run her life, and pissed at him for poisoning everything she touched. And I saw the shift happen right in front of me. This wasn't the same woman who told me to apologize to him at Christmas. This was someone finally waking up, ready to fight for herself. And when Kendall decided she was done playing babysitter, Landon started unraveling faster than I ever expected. It turns out her old friends had been trying to tell her for years that Landon was the problem. He always tagged along and made everything awkward, so hanging out with Kendall meant dealing with him, too. When one of them finally told her that straight, Kendall didn't hesitate. She just said, "He's not in my life anymore." That one sentence actually rebuilt friendships she thought were gone for good. Meanwhile, for me, things finally felt normal. That might sound boring, but after months of chaos, normal was perfect. We weren't constantly looking over our shoulders or bracing for his next stunt. Our arguments became the kind every couple has, whose turn it was to buy groceries, what to order for dinner, or whether to start a new show or finish the one we were already watching. That's the kind of relationship stuff you're supposed to deal with, not "Is your best friend going to stalk you today?" Of course, Landon couldn't resist one last attempt. About 2 months after the restraining order was granted, Kendall's old office called. A letter had shown up for her with no return address, but they'd figured out it was from him. They asked if she wanted them to hold it. She didn't even blink. "Throw it out," she said. When she told me about it later, I just laughed. "Guy's been crying since high school. I guess he's keeping the streak alive." And she actually smiled. The important part was that she didn't look sad or conflicted. She wasn't wondering if she should give him another chance or if she'd been too harsh. She was just done. And that told me everything I needed to know. Looking back, I realized I'd played it right. I never begged her to pick me. I never made it a competition between me and him. I just told her the truth, stood my ground, and when she made her choice at Christmas, I walked. That's what made the difference. If I'd folded and apologized, she never would have seen the situation clearly. She had to wake up on her own. And she did. Now, life is just steady. We go to work, we come home, we figure out what to eat, and we argue about dumb little things like whose turn it is to take the trash out. That's all I ever wanted, peace. No freeloaders, no grown man inserting himself into our relationship like he owned a piece of it. Just us. As for Landon, I don't really care where he is anymore. Eleanor mentioned she's seen him around town looking rough, but Kendall told her to stop giving updates. She doesn't need to know. She doesn't owe him any more space in her head, and she's right. In the end, Kendall proved something important. When it came down to it, she chose to stand up for herself. She stopped defending him, stopped making excuses, and cut him off for good. Not everyone has the guts to do that, especially with someone who's been glued to their life for nearly 2 decades. So yeah, it cost her someone she thought was family, but she gained a real relationship. And I gained a partner who finally saw her own worth. No more circus, no more clown. Just a normal life, exactly how I wanted it.